Hey guys, it's Alexis Kraut here again with Mindful Family Solutions, here to talk about maintaining positive social relationships while we are quarantined. Now, I know that tensions are probably running high and so is conflict. So, I'm here to provide you with some helpful tips to communicate better, reduce conflict, and overall enjoy the company of your family more. So without further ado, let's begin. Table of contents. So today we're going to be going over positive communication techniques, keeping it real while virtual for those that are communicating with family and friends via online devices, tips and tools for co-parenting, and responding effectively to what are called emotional bids, which some of you might not know what an emotional bid is, but don't worry, we will definitely be going over that when we get to section 4. So here are the 6 pillars of positive communication. And I came up with this list of 6 because I felt that these all kind of went into how we communicate effectively with one another. So the first one is the importance of using validating language. When you validate what someone says, you're essentially affirming their emotion and sometimes repeating back what they're saying. So, for example, if I'm going to validate my husband having a hard day at work, he comes home and he says, "Oh, work was so stressful." My validating response would be, "Wow, honey, work sounded really stressful. Tell me more." So I'm not only validating how he feels and repeating back what he said, showing him that I listened, but I'm also inviting him to vent more or explore more of those feelings. Secondly, active listening skills. And one of my favorite phrases is, we don't listen to talk, we listen to hear. So much of our conversations, I feel like, are us trying to figure out what we're going to say in response to what the person just said to us. And we're going through our minds and we're really thinking about, oh, this is the response I want to make, this is the response I want to give. But we're not necessarily hearing them as well as we could. So when we really focus on active listening, we're really focusing on hearing what the other person is saying. We're listening to the emotion, we're listening to the tone of voice, we're digesting the words, and we give them a chance to finish what they're saying and then allow ourselves to fully digest what they said and then think of a response. Thirdly, you guys may have heard me talk about in my last presentation what emotional regulation looks like. So just a cannot find my words today. Quick frame of reference. Emotional regulation is the act of ensuring that the body is physically calm in terms of various stimuli that is met with it. So we're calm in stressful situations, we're calm in not stressful situations. It's just maintaining that regulation. So co-regulating when communicating. One example might be my husband saying, "Oh, coming home kind of upset and saying, 'Oh, the house is a mess. Why is the house a mess?'" I could start to feel maybe frustration come up in my body and think, oh, well, it was a really hard day with the baby all day long. But I can focus on regulating and saying, okay, this is a chance for me to ground myself, to get really calm, to really focus on my physical feelings right now and come up with a response that doesn't show I'm dysregulated. So instead of, yelling or saying something sarcastic or passive aggressive, say, yes, the house is a mess. I didn't get a chance to um, clean that today. So why don't we clean that together when the baby goes to bed, et cetera, et cetera. So that is a regulated response. Self-advocacy and communicating needs. This is super important because I feel like a lot of us struggle with communicating our needs, and that's when a lot of the passive aggressive remarks can come out. So really, really being direct in asking for things and saying what you need. So one of the examples I can think of is maybe a dad and son doing homework together, and the dad's saying, "Listen, son, I'm not very focused right now. I would like to make a cup of coffee, and then can we check back in with your homework together? Is that okay?" So the dad is not only advocating for himself, but he's communicating his needs to his son and offering that to his son and role modeling that to his son. So I think whenever we're feeling certain ways or we're thinking we need certain things, it's always best to communicate that and to advocate for how we're feeling. So emotionally connecting, this is huge. We really, really, really want to make sure that we're in touch with our physical and emotional selves. And when we talk to someone, that we really, really demonstrate that and we connect our emotions to their emotions. So we can really, really show that we are empathetic or we are sympathetic or we are validating how they feel by demonstrating our emotions and really offering that emotional connection with them. And when we offer emotional connection, you're really, really allowing the person to express themselves that much more and allowing yourself to express that much more. Compromise. This one is not last but not least. This one is so important. If you've ever heard the phrase pick and choose your battles, it's really, really, really important. And it's important because a lot of the times that we may feel dysregulated or we may feel really, really angry about something and we don't want to compromise, these are the best opportunities for compromising because we allow ourselves to regulate through compromising. So the example I brought up earlier with the dishes or the cleaning the house or whatever, an effective compromise in that situation could be, well, I don't necessarily feel like cleaning, but you know what? I could take care of the kitchen while he goes and works on his truck in the garage or something like that. That's a compromise. And how he could compromise is instead of coming in and getting upset that the house is not very clean, he could just come in and start cleaning. So those are ways we can compromise. And I think that the more we compromise, the more connected we are to our loved ones because we're not necessarily fighting, um, fighting to stand our ground in that way. We are opening up the doors to open communication and allowing ourselves to be more open, essentially. So always think to yourself whenever you're in a situation where there might be the potential for a compromise, is this a good situation? Is this a great opportunity for a compromise? Could this compromise avoid conflict? And that's ultimately what we want to do at the end of the day, is avoid conflict through compromising. So this is an example of a validating statement, kind of going back to about using validating language. Sorry, my little window is up on the words. So I need to log off for a few moments and take some space. And now this can be very frequently heard right now with all the internet communication we have and maybe the rise in internet fights, with all that's going on and all the quarantine. So this person responds with, "I hear that you feel frustrated at your work's lack of seriousness towards COVID-19. So this could be a person sitting at work or sitting at home working and being told to do XYZ and venting to a coworker that I just need to log off and take some space for a minute. Like, I'm feeling really frustrated. And this person is responding with, "I hear you." So I'm saying that I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm also offering that validation piece. So whenever you're mindful of offering that validation to someone, think of the phrase, "I hear you." Oops. Okay, so number two, keeping it real while virtual. So, keeping your logic mind online, and when I talk about the logic mind, I'm talking about your prefrontal cortex. That's a part of the brain that is responsible for logic, emotional stability, personality. Um, and we want to maintain this logic brain while we're online. So, one thing's for certain is we can't necessarily read tone of voice when we're communicating via text, via Facebook chat, via email. So, one thing I always say is whenever you read an email or a text or a message that may seem off putting it to you, read it as if your best friend sent it to you. And then that can change your frame of mind, which can ultimately change whether you feel regulated or dysregulated. Um, One thing too is I compiled a list of bullets that really can help us be mindful while we're maintaining all these online conversations and connections. And the first one is radical self love. And when I say radical self love, I'm talking about um, maybe not being online as much, or maybe not having as many online conversations with certain people. Really paying attention to how you feel in your body and what your needs are, and advocating is all radical self love. So, like I mentioned before, staying regulated, really maintaining that. If you see or hear something you don't like online, um, ignore it, maintain that regulation, ground yourself, ground your feet, etc. Um, Honesty and accountability, avoiding hot topics, and maintaining healthy emotional boundaries are all super important. um, Avoid those public chats where people are constantly fighting with each other. Avoid politics and religion, especially online. These are all topics that can really contribute to you being dysregulated and not necessarily acting in your own best interest. So, number three is tools for co parenting. This was brought up in last week in the last discussion, and I thought it was really important to talk about because there's so many parents that are having to co-parent right now through this quarantine and are not really sure how to go about it effectively. So that's what I'm here for. Number one, so important, is focus on the kids. So, when in doubt, if you're about to engage in conflict or if you're having a nice time or a good conversation, just keep it about the kids. Co parenting can be really tough in general. So, I think that if you focus on the kids and keep that as your main drive, then you're a lot of times going to have better relations if you don't, necessarily contribute your own personal problems outside of the kids with your co-parent. Um, Another way to focus on the kids, while this doesn't sound like focusing on the kids, is to do your best to maintain a healthy relationship with your co-parent as a means of focusing on the kids. So if you can avoid a conflicting conversation or compromise like what we talked about before, with the kids in mind, you're choosing to focus on the kids and you're choosing to not engage in something that can take away from your focus on the kids. Number two is self explanatory. Keep it self explanatory. Thank you. Keep it respectful. When we keep it respectful and we do our best, we're also maintaining that emotional regulation piece. And we're also making things easier between ourselves and the other co-parent. If we're constantly fighting over little things that we don't necessarily need to fight about, or we're nitpicking each other, or we're making disrespectful comments, it's taking away from A, the focus on the kids, and B, it's contributing to emotional dysregulation, which can lead to negative reactions, poor impulse control, etc. So we ultimately want to stay regulated, focus on the kids, keep it respectful. Use positive communication techniques. Yes, yes, yes. So, like the ones I listed before, validating language, advocating for your needs, etc. Use these positive communication techniques when you're, um, I don't want to say dealing with, but you're in connection with your co parent. If you're talking about pick up and drop off, or if you're talking about when to cook dinner, etc., use these positive communication techniques. Now, if you can't remember all six, the most important one to remember is to use validating language. Um, that can go so, so far with just that piece. If we just repeat back what the person is saying and use affirming words and really affirm their emotions, that can just really, really contribute to having a peaceful conversation. So, an example of this could be um, so let's say you had agreed that your co-parent was going to drop your kiddo off at 3 o'clock and it's 3:45 and you're getting kind of annoyed, you know, everything's okay. They checked in, they said they're running late. And you have this urge or this drive or this impulse to say, you're always late. I don't know why you're never not on time. I can never rely on you. Or you could say, I understand that you were trying to make lunch or you were trying to make a snack before she left. I appreciate that. I'll see you when you get here. So, those are two examples of what you can do through positive communication. And basically, one chooses to drive conflict, and one chooses to drive away from conflict and be more peaceful. Um, so, number four, always important, and I repeat this all too often, is stay and get regulated. So, while you're contacting them or in conversation with the co parent, ground your feet to the floor, take some deep breaths, really introspectively look at yourself. Am I regulated right now? So, that example I used earlier of that response of, you're always late, you're so unreliable. That is fueled by frustration and anger, which are emotions that come out of dysregulation. So, by saying, oh, you know what? I'm feeling this impulse, this drive to say these things. I'm going to ground my feet in the floor and take a couple deep breaths. And once I feel better, I'm going to say, you know what? Thank you for making a snack. I understand you're late. Please get here safely and on time, or not on time. Please get here safely as soon as you can. Next time, maybe we can work out a better time for you to drop them off. Or next time, why don't I come pick them up, etc. There's ways of compromising, and there's ways of using positive communication, and there's ways of staying regulated through this all. So that example was, I felt the urge to dysregulate. I chose grounding techniques to stay regulated, and I used positive communication techniques, one of them being compromise and the other being validating language. So, last but not least, responding effectively to what are called emotional bids. So, there's a really famous family therapist called Dr. John Gottman, and he came up with the theory of emotional bids between romantic partners. So, in his research, he observed that happy couples turn towards their partners approximately 20 times more than couples in distress during everyday non conflict situations. And so he came up with the theory of emotional bids, in that couples would make deposits into each other's emotional accounts when they would be receptive to something that the other partner wanted, essentially. So, what essentially is an emotional bid? A request for affection, love, affirmation, and connection. Um, so basically, the other partner is essentially asking something of the other one in the form of affection, love, affirmation, and connection. So every time you positively respond to your partner's emotional bid, you make a deposit into their emotional bank account. So the little moments add up. Each moment where you positively respond, it continues to build on your relationship, and the likelihood of everyday stressors turning into a huge blowup significantly goes down. So here are some examples of emotional bidding. Your partner surprises you by cooking dinner. Your partner tells you to go relax while they take the kids for a few hours. Your partner asks you about your day, and your partner asks you for help with something they may not actually need help with. So these are all examples of emotional bidding. So the next time your partner comes home and says, "Oh, honey, I totally found this beautiful box at an antique store, and I totally thought of you. So I brought it home and I wanted to see what you thought." That's an emotional bid. So, what we can do with this theory of emotional bid is just be mindful of when our partners um, are essentially emotionally bidding and are requesting affirmation, love, and connection from us through that. So if we choose that mindfulness piece, we can build on a relationship and really, really grow stronger together. And this is especially relevant during the quarantine because conflicts are high, tension is high, and we might be missing these emotional bids. We might not be as mindful towards them, but really focusing on the fact when our parents, when our partners are requesting that of us can really, really help reduce some of that conflict and really, really grow that love and that connection to be even stronger. Thank you so much for watching. We will begin our live Q&A shortly. I so look forward to hearing all of your questions, and I can't wait to discuss.